He was being brutally beaten by his former teammate. Once, he was the greatest sword genius of all, but 3 years ago, Ranson was sent on an impossible mission. He returned crippled, missing a hand and a leg, all because of his teammates' jealousy. Now, he was beaten and humiliated every single day. But one day, he opened a strange book written in a language he didn't even know he could read. The book began to glow, and he vanished. He found himself inside a dungeon, 10,000 years in the past. There, he obtained a legendary item and returned to the present. That item released his sealed power and healed his arms and legs. And now, the Swordmaster Ranson was ready to begin his revenge. But before that, on the outskirts of Kushan City, a lonely castle stood in silence. A group of men enters the main hall. One of them questions whether the information is wrong, but believes it since it came from Lord Xius. He then asks if he is the only one who sees no demonic beasts, not even an ant. The subordinate comments that the rumor of Chief Nagi's arrival must have spread. His companion agrees that this would make sense. They find themselves in a vast hall, now in ruins. One of the men wonders what place that is, since it was not on the map. Another points toward an exit with a staircase leading upward. Before them lies a staircase and a corridor. The subordinate looks at the map and says they should go up since the other path seems ominous. Nagi recalls that the Il Neon gang was supposed to take care of the upper floor. He then points toward the corridor and states that they will go that way, and with a gesture orders the group to move forward. But the subordinate questions the sudden order. Nagi insists that he go. The lackey then obeys his chief and turns to leave. Under the commander's gaze, he enters the dark corridor. From there, he turns around and reports that there is nothing there. Another man also reports to Nagi that there is nothing, as a creature emerges behind him. The beast attacks the man. A pack of wolves emerges from the darkness. The creatures advance, and then the entire pack runs out of the corridor. A barrier rises from the ground, blocking the passage. One of the men reacts to the appearance of the creatures. The group now finds itself surrounded by wolves in the middle of the hall. One of them asks what they will do with so many demonic beasts. The commander grabs him and throws the question back at him. He shouts that if they want to live, then they must fight. Then he orders his men to move out and block the creatures. The beasts advance and attack the rest of the group. Nagi, the leader of the group, presses himself against the wall and then lets his sword fall to the ground. One of the wolves leaps toward him to attack, but the creature is struck in the neck by an arrow. The man watches the beast's body fall before him. The wolf now lies dead on the ground. On the upper floor, an archer asks if they want help. The commander recognizes him and calls out to his brother, Ranson. Ranson lands on the ground and comments that the timing was perfect. He then tells Nagi to watch closely. Ranson grips his weapon and declares that this is the level of a master swordsman. The wolf then lunges forward to attack, but he pierces the creature through its mouth. With a single strike, he cuts the animal in half. The other beasts rush toward him. Ranson then attacks and brings down the entire pack at once. The remaining men celebrate the victory of the newcomer. Ranson now stands amid the bodies of the wolves. Nagi approaches and praises him, saying that a master swordsman is on another level. He then wonders what reward Count Xius will give him. Nagi claims that he could have handled all of that on his own, but Ranson replies that he is only first-rate with his mouth, since his swordsmanship is low class. He then advises him to train more if he wants to become stronger. Nagi agrees with a smile on his face. He then states that he will have to do so. In the ruins of Il Neon, in the city of Kushan, a camp has been set up. Bursun runs toward Ranson and asks him about the reason for his delay. Ranson apologizes and says that unforeseen events occurred. Bursun informs him that Count Xius was there and that the situation is not good. Ranson then asks what happened. He hands him a scroll and says that the Count took the children. Ranson opens the scroll to read the message, but its contents leave him in shock. The scroll orders him to kill Delkashu and return. The Blood Count Delkashu is a powerful vampire who possesses true blood. He is also the master swordsman who rules the city of Kashu, making him Xius's mortal enemy. And in order to receive Xius's support, they end up doing all kinds of dirty work for him. Prince Ranson only wanted to leave that place with the children and live in peace, but Bursun laments having been loyal to that wretch for more than 10 years. Ranson prepares to depart with his companions. His companion tries to stop him, reminding him that Count Delkashu is a pure-blood vampire, but he replies that he has no reason to live without his brothers. The man questions where he thinks he is going in his condition, since he has just returned. He then replies that they cannot afford to lose any more time, since the children have been taken. Bursun insists that it is too dangerous, since he has specialist-level vampires under his command. Ranson then calls him by name Sir Bursun, and declares that this is an order. The man lowers his head and agrees, addressing him as Your Highness. Ranson then orders Sir Bursun to stay behind and take care of his brothers. He promises that he will surely win and return to fix everything. Bursun watches as Ranson and his group move away. He then clenches his fist and decides that this time he cannot obey that order. In the continental year 1337, on March 11th, the kingdom of Manhwa is in flames. The queen of the kingdom of Manhwa orders them to take ransom and leave, saying that she will hold them off. But Bursun, the commander of the knights, refuses and declares that he will stay to protect the queen. The queen then tells Sir Bursun that what he must protect now is the bloodline of the kingdom of Manhwa. He hesitates to carry out the order. Kneeling before the second prince, she instructs him to survive at all costs. She then reminds him that he must also fulfill his duty to the royal family. The prince tells his mother that he does not want to flee alone. She then removes her necklace and places it around his neck, stating that it will surely help him. With one final request, she asks him to restore the Manhwa royal family. Bursun swears to dedicate his life to serving His Highness, as the sky burns in flames. Unable even to die, he narrowly escapes, carrying only the second prince. He failed to protect them as the capital burned, and he was forced to flee without being able to protect either the king or the queen. Of all days, that day was precisely His Highness the second prince's 13th birthday. The prince, who witnessed the death of his family, looked upon the burning sky as the kingdom of Manhwa came to an end. The kingdom, with its 500 years of history, had perished. They reached the escape route and, together with the last noble heirs and 20 knights, prepared to cross the border. On the first day of April of the continental year 1337, they sail across a raging sea. Amid the storm, the group manages to cross the border into Roxium. On August 23rd of the same year, they finally arrive at their destination. The group enters Robberland, a lawless land that shelters criminals and fugitives from all over the world. After 2 months in the city of Kushan, many knights have died along the way, and now only 12 remain. The second prince, Ranson, is now the only legitimate heir, along with the last successors of the noble families. They must protect them, even if dishonor and misery await them. Their journey leads them to the castle of Count Delkashu, in the city of Kashu. Through a window, they spot a hall filled with bodies. Bursun cuts his way through the enemies inside the castle. He presses his wound and tells himself to endure a little longer. Then he runs toward where His Highness Ranson is, and he prays that he will please be safe. He finally reaches a blood-stained double door and opens it. Bursun stops when he sees what lies inside. The throne hall is destroyed and filled with bodies. At the top of the staircase, Delkashu lies dead on his throne, a sword lodged in his chest. Bursun looks around and asks what happened. After hearing a cough, he spots Ranson on the stairs and calls out to him. His eyes widen at the sight. The prince is lying on the steps, gravely wounded. Ranson says that everything is already over. Bursun asks if it is truly over. He then remembers the promise he made to the queen to protect the Manhwa bloodline. He wonders whether all their despair and hope will truly end like that. With a determined expression, he refuses to accept such an ending. He then declares that it cannot end this way. With his fist clenched, he approaches Ranson's body on the ground. Bursun carries him on his back, determined to save His Highness. 3 years later, life goes on in the ruins of Ilneon, in the city of Kushan. 2 children run and play together through the village. A young man with a prosthetic arm works at a construction site. Ranson pauses for a moment when Bursun calls out to him. The older man walks toward him. From the top of a ladder, Ranson notices his arrival. The prosthetic on his leg slips off the step and he loses his balance. Bursun supports him and asks if he is all right, but Ranson wants to know what the Count said. He replies that, as always, the Count told him to wait another month. Ranson says they can manage for now, and then they will ask again next month. Bursun reminds him that he told him not to do that kind of thing. But Ranson replies with a smile that he cannot ask the children to do it. His companion then comments that those children have already grown up. Even if they have grown up, Ranson begins to say something. Bursun interrupts him and guesses that he was going to say that he would protect them. Ranson then finishes by saying that he would regret not having the elixir, and the man agrees. Known as the Potion of Life, the elixir is an ancient miracle found 200 years ago in the Ilneon dungeon. He states that this is merely an old story. Ranson then asks what that has to do with him, and Bursun decides not to say anything more. The older man assumes that a miracle like that will not happen again. 3 youths run toward them, calling out to the teacher. They shout for him to be careful as something falls from the sky. Ranson raises his arm and catches a falling sword. With the weapon in hand, he warns that he has just fixed the roof and will not do it again. He then returns the sword to the boy and advises him never to let it go again. The boy justifies himself, saying that he was holding it tightly. But Ranson explains that it is not about gripping the sword tightly. He demonstrates that one must brace both legs and distribute the weight throughout the entire body. And then one must visualize the opponent in the mind. He recalls his own battle. In his memory, he was cornered and wounded. Delkashu leaped toward him for the final attack. The Count swung his sword in a fierce strike. Delkashu told him that the more one has to protect, the heavier one's thoughts become. Then the vampire ordered him to die, but Ranson managed to block the blow with his sword. He declared that he could not die because he had something to protect. Delkashu grabbed him and delivered another attack. Blood splattered across his face as he defended himself. In his memory, he delivers the final blow against the Count. He grips the wooden sword firmly. Bersun and the boy watch him as the wooden beam above them splits apart. The boy comments that Instructor Ranson tore the wooden dummy apart. Ranson looks at the training dummy, now split in two. He apologizes, explaining that he was only trying to demonstrate the strike and that he will fix it. Another boy runs toward him, calling out to Instructor Ranson. The young man arrives and announces that there is a big problem. He says that Daisy and Seclin are in trouble. Ranson's expression changes instantly. Inside a building, he realizes that something is wrong. He runs down the corridor, stating that this is more than a children's quarrel because he smells blood. Ranson then shouts for the children. In a hall, Daisy and Seclin are facing each other with swords. The girl is Daisy of the Ilneon family. The boy is Seclin of the Ilneon family. Nagi greets him and comments that it has been a while, Brother Ranson. Ranson stares at him seriously. Nagi, Xius's vassal, asks what he thinks he is doing. He then explains that they are in the middle of an interview. Ranson repeats the word, questioning the interview. Nagi says that if they show potential, he is thinking of making them his direct bloodline. He then asks how he dares to mix his blood with theirs. Nagi refers to him as brother, and begins to say that even becoming the lowest bloodline would be better. It would be better than being under the command of a broken, crippled man without limbs. Then the protagonist asks whether Count Xius knows about this. Nagi says that his brother truly does not understand the situation, and asks whether he thinks a busy person cares about trivial matters. Ranson asks if he came on his own, even knowing that this is the territory of their family. He confirms that he knew and came because of a rumor that the great master swordsman Ranson lost his limbs, and all of that because of a few brats. Ranson questions what he just heard. Nagi taunts him, asking if he can even protect them with that body. He orders him to leave the children alone and go away in silence, or else he will kill him. Nagi then mocks him and asks whether he even has the power to do that. Ranson rushes forward and attacks him with a punch, but two of Nagi's men block his attack with their swords. He then declares that they are no match and tells them not to underestimate a master swordsman. Bersun warns them not to underestimate a master swordsman as Ranson crosses blades with the two men. He then tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword. With a single motion, he sends both opponents flying away. Nagi then praises Ranson, saying that he is still as incredible as ever. Ranson comments that newcomers these days have no sense of fear. Nagi simply asks him not to be so harsh. But Delkashu intervenes, stating that their opponent is a monster. Ranson remarks that Nagi still seems insecure around him. Delkashu repeats the word insecure with a smile, and then asks whether that insecurity is toward him as Daisy and Seclin watch. Nagi then draws his sword. Ranson realizes that there is no way out in his current condition. He prepares to decide the fight with a single strike. In an instant, Ranson lunges and strikes Nagi. Nagi manages to block Ranson's attack with his sword, but Ranson states that he caught him. Then he unleashes a flurry of strikes. Nagi counters with a single slash. Next, the blades of the two collide. Ranson's blade shatters upon impact. He then asks Ranson what happened to him, and Nagi reveals that his core is completely ruined, and Ranson questions him. He then asks whether Ranson truly thought he would not reach the highest ranks. Nagi raises his sword and declares that this is why bloodlines are superior. He turns to Ranson and asks what he should do with him now. Nagi then suggests killing them one by one, as Daisy and Seclin stare at him. Bersun tightens his grip on his sword, deciding that if it is a fight, he will lose anyway. He then sheaths his weapon. Bersun simply calls out to Nagi. Ranson asks him to stop there, saying that there are children who need to be protected. Nagi merely laughs and asks what that is supposed to be. He then asks whether the master swordsman Ranson is begging him. Ranson admits that he is, stating that he knows him very well. He knows that what Nagi wants is to trample him and see him fall. Then Nagi sheaths his sword and says that he cannot let him escape so easily. He cracks his knuckles and says that he also needs to stretch a little. Next, Nagi lands a punch to Ranson's face. He follows up with another strike. Ranson crashes to the ground from the impact. He steps on Ranson's head as he tries to say something. Ranson finally manages to say that he is sorry. Nagi breaks into a smile. He then tells them not to go easy on him. Nagi announces that they will stop for today and continue tomorrow. Two boys approach the fallen Ranson and ask what they should do now that he is lost, but he replies that everything is fine because it was enough to protect them. Later, in a room, Ranson questions Daisy and Seclin about the reason for their actions. He then asks whether they were truly trying to become bloodline relatives. Seclin apologizes to his master. Daisy remains silent with her arms crossed while the boy kneels beside her. Ranson asks if she has nothing to say. He then questions her about what she just said. Daisy asks why she cannot serve under Cassius's command. She reminds him that he himself was once his servant. She then asks him if he has forgotten. Ranson explains that because of Sias's greedy desire to become a vampire, all of his companions and their families died. And he ended up like that. He then asks her if she now wants to crawl beneath him, and asks whether she intends to live by sucking blood. Daisy stands up and retorts, asking what that has to do with him and whether he is her father. She declares that she will take care of her own life, and demands that he stop interfering in her affairs and live his own life. Ranson calls out to her as she runs out of the room. Seclin calls out to his master, and then says that Daisy did not mean any harm. And Ranson says that he knows. Seclin continues, saying that sometimes it takes courage to kneel in a situation like that. He then tells Ranson that he must be in a lot of pain. Seclin says that he will ask Uncle Burson for a potion. Ranson thanks him as the young man leaves. Then Burson suddenly enters and asks if Ranson is all right, and Ranson asks him what happened. Burson begins to explain that earlier Lena told him something. She heard from Daisy that Ranson and Nagi were fighting, and that it seemed someone might get hurt. So the girl went to him to ask for help. Lena simply calls out to her uncle. The girl asks why he told, since Daisy had asked him to keep it a secret, and Burson confirms it. Ranson starts to laugh at the situation, and then he bursts into laughter. He thanks everyone for their concern as Bursoon hands him a potion. Ranson takes the vial and also thanks Daisy. Alone, he coughs. Ranson laments that if his core were intact, he could have dealt with Nagi. The scene shifts to two children running happily outside. He then corrects himself, stating that simply protecting the children is already enough. Ranson wonders what he will do, since Nagi will return the next day. He decides that he has no choice but to use the object in his hand. Ranson activates the object in his hand. Then he decides to sell a royal treasure of the Van Roa family to raise funds and protect the children. He considers that the royal seal could be tracked by the Empire, so the only thing worth selling is something else. In the end, he pulls the Book of Destiny from a portal. Ranson opens the book and questions why it is considered a royal treasure. Ancient symbols then emanate from the pages. The book displays a date from the Ruseras calendar, describing the secret chapel of cultists filled with symbols. He is surprised that he is able to read the ancient language. Then the book completely envelops him. A medallion with a star appears. The scene returns to the now empty room. Suddenly, Ranson finds himself among people running and wonders what is happening. He runs along with them, questioning why he is there when he was just reading the Book of Destiny. He stops and realizes that this is not an illusion, but a real place. He recognizes the location as the Ilneon dungeon, but wonders why it looks so new. Then the group stops and he questions what is happening and who those people are. One of the hooded men announces that an intruder has entered the chapel. He then orders them to secure the elixir first. Ranson reacts upon hearing the word elixir. He realizes that the structure is identical to the Ilneon dungeon and that the elixir was excavated there in the year 3673 of the Ruseras calendar. This means that he has traveled 10,000 years into the past. The hooded men approach an altar where the elixir is displayed. Ranson watches the scene and confirms that all of it is real. The elixir is there, proving that he truly returned to the past. One of the men picks up a small vial and states that the elixir is secure. Ranson decides that if he can obtain the elixir, he will be able to recover everything he lost. He then counts a total of 12 people around him. He tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword, considering whether he should kill them all and take the elixir. But one of the men orders them to split into pairs and search for the intruder before taking the offering. One of the men assigns the tasks, sending Kaltik and Crumb to the eastern passage and Seirung and Totun to the western one. He then assigns Saruis and Ranson to the northern passage, and Ranson is surprised that he knows his name. He wonders why those people from the past recognize him as an ally. Ranson concludes that only a powerful mind-altering magic could cause this, and questions what the Book of Destiny truly is. His new partner draws his attention, asking why he is standing there doing nothing. The man then urges him to hurry. Ranson decides that for now he will gather information and look for an opportunity. The two walk together down the corridor. They then come across a woman, but she lunges forward and attacks his partner. He defeats her in a single motion. The attacker then turns toward Ranson. Ranson questions the transparent trail left by the strike. The man attacks, but Ranson blocks the blow with his sword. He then tightens his grip on his weapon with force. With a single movement, Ranson pushes him back. He then comments that the sword's durability is terrible. The attacker wonders whether that is a sword aura or something else. Ranson realizes that he is not the only one who finds the situation odd. He then decides to test it once more and readies his sword. Suddenly, he has a sharp realization. Two children appear hiding behind a pillar. They run behind Ranson, who asks why they are there. The man, now protecting the children, accuses him of having no shame for allying with cultists who kidnap children. She questions him, asking whether he plans to kidnap children and use them as living sacrifices. The scene then shifts to Burson serving a meal to his family. Ranson is also present at the table, smiling. Back in the present, other cultists arrive at the site and ask what happened. They then ask Ranson whether Saruas was defeated by the intruder, and he confirms it. Their leader then orders them to join forces. The cultists advance in a coordinated attack. The woman is surprised by the sudden assault as the children hide. Ranson turns to her and says that they should be on the same side. Two cultists run down the corridor toward them. One of them points at the fight and shouts that he found them. He then wonders whether Ranson was ambushed and orders them to help him. The woman crosses her sword with Ranson's. Ranson simply observes the scene. He then attacks one of the cultists from behind. Ranson stabs him, and the cultist accuses him of betrayal. Ranson then stands over the man's body. He thanks her for the small performance, which made it easy to kill him. He explains that the man attacked him recklessly, so he merely retaliated to save his own life. Ranson then asks her to continue helping him just as she is now. One of the cultist leaders approaches, stating that he cannot read that guy. He stops in front of the fallen bodies and asks Ranson whether that was a betrayal. The cultist comments that the resentful spirit of someone who died bitterly from betrayal is not bad at all. Ranson and the woman stare at him as he adds the chaotic nature of betrayal itself, and states that with the soul of a noble knight, the Lord will be even more pleased. The woman laments not having called for reinforcements, as she did not expect an advanced specialist to appear there. She glances to the side. The children cower behind her. She then corrects herself, stating that she is an intermediate-level specialist. The woman admits that she cannot defeat him alone, and proposes attacking first, so that Ranson can look for an opening. She then rushes forward and attacks the cultist. He blocks the strike, and hits her with a punch. The woman prepares for a counterattack, but he manages to evade her sword. The cultist smiles and prepares to deliver the finishing blow. She simply looks upward toward the imminent attack. Ranson watches the scene carefully. He then steps forward. In an instant, Ranson lunges forward at high speed. He then delivers a spinning slash against the cultist. Ranson's attack is blocked by an artifact, and the woman watches the scene. She then rushes in to attack the cultist. He smiles and asks whether she thought he would have died without that. Then Ranson fights against the cultists. Ranson struggles to block the blows, unable to predict the path of the sword. The woman positions herself to attack the cultist from behind. She attacks, but he turns around and blocks her strike. The woman then turns to Ranson and asks what he is doing. She questions why he is so weak, and he merely looks at his hand. The cultist taunts him, questioning the usefulness of his technique, since he is nothing more than a mediocre swordsman. He then attacks her with a powerful blow. The woman is thrown away by the impact. The cultist prepares to attack again. He bids farewell to Ranson, who recalls all the work he endured under Count Cassius's command. Then Ranson decides to show him what a mediocre attack can do. He then uses his aura thread technique. Ranson charges forward and attacks the cultist with his blade. The man is surprised, as Ranson's power is on a completely different level than before. The two then collide in a mutual clash. Ranson strikes him with a giant hand formed by his technique. The cultist is hit by the attack. He stares at Ranson. Ranson then stabs him in the chest, but his sword breaks and he falls to the ground. The woman merely watches him from a distance, fallen. Ranson gets up and, standing over the cultist's body, asks what he is. He then kneels down and begins to search the man's body. Ranson finds a small wooden box. He opens it and finds the elixir, stating that it is there. Ranson prepares to drink the contents of the vial. The woman questions him about what he is doing. Then the cultist's body dissolves into particles as she calls out to him. A golden pocket watch appears. The scene shifts to ancient ruins under the moonlight. Daisy is outside, wondering where her brother went at that hour of the night. She speaks with Burson, saying that she needs to apologize to Ranson, even though it is late. Daisy approaches the house, wondering if he has already returned. Her eyes widen. She finds Ranson lying on the ground. The girl then calls out for her brother. Ranson is unconscious, holding the wooden box. Beside Ranson's bed, Daisy and Burson watch him in silence. She says that she will stay by his side, and Burson asks to be informed when he wakes up. Daisy then agrees with a simple nod. Alone, she continues to watch over him. Ranson remains unconscious on the bed with his injuries. She stares at him intently for a moment. Suddenly, Ranson moves on the bed. He raises his prosthetic hand and denies having drunk at all. Then he suddenly wakes up, gasping. Ranson looks at his own hand, confused. Then he turns and notices Daisy's presence. Relieved, she calls him brother and asks what happened, why he disappeared, and why he was covered in blood. He remains silent, leaving her confused by his lack of response. Ranson sits up and asks why she is staring at him like that, confirming that she called him brother. Embarrassed, she denies having said that, but he points out that her eyes and cheeks are swollen from crying. With a smile, Ranson asks if she was truly worried, and Daisy confirms it, asking if she should not have been. He then thanks her and pats her head, and she complains that she is no longer a child. Ranson reflects that it had been a while since he last played around like that with Daisy. Suddenly, he brings his hand to his head and loses his balance. She panics and calls out to him as he leans toward the edge of the bed. Ranson looks at his hand and realizes that it was not a dream. It was real. Daisy questions him about his body and then removes his arm prosthesis. Ranson stands up and declares that his body has returned. He staggers forward, declaring that he has returned. Then he collapses to the floor and Daisy screams his name. Voices echo about his arms and legs having grown back and warnings not to pull his arm. Ranson slowly opens his eyes, confused. Bersun, Daisy, Seclin, and little Lena stare down at him. Bersun asks Ranson how such a miracle could have happened. He reveals that he drank an elixir, leaving Bersun shocked by the cost of 50,000 dalens for a single sip. Ranson says that first he needs to check something and lifts the blanket. Bersun asks if he can move, and Ranson replies that he may need rehabilitation, but he will be fine. He approaches a dresser and picks up a small wooden box. Ranson asks Bersun to accompany him, and he agrees. Together, they look at an empty altar where the elixir should have been. Bersun asks him what is going on, but Ranson admits that he also cannot believe the situation. He opens the box, revealing a key, and says that he needs to check something. A memory shows that security was especially reinforced around the key. This leads him to conclude that it is the key to opening a secret space. He raises the key and a summoning circle manifests from it. The circle then rapidly expands around the two of them. Ranson wonders what it is. Before them, a secret room is revealed, containing treasures and a mannequin wearing a cloak. The gold coins alone are worth 5,000 dalens, and beyond that there are artifacts, ancient swords and armor, and even basic tools. Bersun questions Ranson about how all of this happened, first with his limbs regenerated and now this. With a hand on the back of his neck, Ranson admits that he also cannot believe it. Ranson then reveals that he traveled to that very same place 10,000 years in the past. The revelation leaves Bersun completely shocked by what he heard. Then he realizes that everything was real. Ranson wonders whether the artifact's power is not single use and whether he can return to the past repeatedly. He calls out to Bersun and states that there is something he needs to do first. Elsewhere, Delkashu smiles with satisfaction. He stretches on a bed surrounded by bodies on the floor and comments that this is what it means to live. He calls out to Ranson and asks whether they should go see that trash. When he opens the door, he comes face to face with Ranson and asks what that is. Nagi asks if Ranson came there to greet him, but then he notices Ranson's arms and legs and questions him. Nagi orders his men to quickly inform the Lord that Ranson has recovered his core. Ranson draws his sword in response and lunges forward with a swift slash. The attack surprises one of Nagi's men. The strike hits him squarely in the chest, and the other man is struck the same way. Nagi stares at him, unable to understand how that was possible. Ranson tightens his grip and charges toward Nagi. He runs across the hall, ready to attack. Nagi draws his sword to defend himself. Then he blocks Ranson's strike. With a smile, he asks whether Ranson intends to fight using an aura thread instead of a full blade. Nagi realizes that Ranson's core has not fully recovered yet. Ranson grips his sword firmly. He simply asks, "So what?" Then Ranson prepares to attack again. Nagi takes a combat stance, stating that he is different from 3 years ago and that he is now an E-class noble. He boasts about his superior physique and his immortal regenerative ability. He would be a worthy opponent even for a master swordsman. Ranson's attack surges toward Nagi. He is struck head-on by the blow, and Nagi's head is severed from his body by the sword strike. The decapitated body then dissolves into particles before Ranson. He kneels and states that his core has recovered, but he still needs to gather his aura again. At another time, Daisy asks him whether he truly went back to the past and drank the elixir. Ranson confirms it and explains that he used a treasure of the Manhwa royal family to return to the past. Bersun then asks whether he can return again, but Ranson says he does not know, since the item no longer showed any reaction. A woman named Se Milan expresses her doubts, suggesting that perhaps an artifact from the Age of Magic could make it possible. Ranson reflects on whether something so small could truly contain divine power, no matter how ancient the technology. Daisy interrupts him, questioning the elixir discovered 200 years ago, since he drank it 10,000 years ago. He then realizes something and exclaims that she is right, leaving her confused. Ranson remembers that he drank only half of the elixir before returning. He asks Bersun whether there is any record that only half of the elixir was found, but Bersun has never heard about the quantity. With his hands raised, Ranson concludes that in that case it is impossible to know. They wonder whether a complete elixir was originally discovered, or whether history was altered because Ranson drank half of it. Saimalan then warns him that if he can return to the past again, what he did there could change the entire world. Ranson is asked what he would wish to achieve if he could change the past. He reflects for a moment on his objective. His first goal is revenge for losing his parents and siblings overnight, and his duty as the last member of the Manhwa royal family is the reconstruction of the kingdom. But Ranson states that to do that, he must first kill Count Cius. He remembers when he believed that his family's safety would be guaranteed if he became a vassal of the Lord of Kushan. But he realizes that happiness gained through another person's hands cannot be firm. Seymolan warns him that Count Cius is strong, as he was already a master swordsman and has now taken Delkashu's true blood. Ranson says that this is not an option, and wonders how Cius will react when he discovers how insane he has become. Gathered around the table, he declares that this is an unavoidable fight for everyone. He then informs them that the tax report that must be submitted to Count Cius is due in 3 weeks. Ranson states with conviction that they must settle the matter before then. Ranson trains alone with his sword in a ruined arena. He recalls the swordsmanship used by the cult members 10,000 years ago. It was a persistent and solid technique, possessing a cutting energy. One of the cultists mocked the usefulness of an aura blade, and called him a mediocre swordsman who could not read the mind of the sword. But Ranson feels as if he is conversing with the blade itself, or rather, as if he has become the sword itself. Then he opens his eyes with a new perception. He grips the weapon and declares that he now understands. Ranson states that it is definitely not an aura. Daisy runs toward him, shouting that something terrible has happened. The mention of Count Cius's name puts him on alert. In his hall, a man informs the Lord that Ranson's family has been invited to the castle in 3 days. Delkashu states that he has waited a long time for the nobles of the kingdom of Manhwa, and that the time has finally come to use them as sacrifices. Ranson reflects that there are only 3 weeks left until the tax deadline, and now the Count suddenly invites them. Burson raises the possibility that the Count has discovered Nagi's death, but Ranson doubts it, believing that he would blame the rebels. Seymolan intervenes, saying that the real problem is that their plan to assassinate the Count was ruined by the sudden invitation. She reveals that their only chance was when Count Cius performed his ritual, piquing Ranson's curiosity. Seymolan explains that since what happened to his brother, the Count leaves the castle once a month to perform a ritual alone. Daisy adds that she also saw Cius's men kidnapping children. Seymolan concludes by stating that villages unable to pay taxes were exterminated, and that everyone, both bodies and children, is used as sacrifices. Ranson asks why he would prepare corpses and living offerings to abase himself before a being he does not even understand. He laments how much everything changed while he was confined at home with his injured limbs. Ranson then asks Seymolan how she knows all of this. She simply replies that she has an information network. He grows agitated, questioning how she went alone to such a dangerous city. Seymolan simply reinforces that their plan has been completely ruined. Burson comments that Saya is already 20 years old and an adult, but Ranson retorts that it is still dangerous for her to walk through the city alone. Daisy then calls him brother. She asks him whether he can truly defeat Cius. Holding his sword, Ranson replies firmly that he must. He then places the blade on the table and states that with it, they have a chance. Burson recognizes it as the king's sword, a weapon forged by refining celestial silver steel with aura. Ranson raises it and declares that corrupted beings like vampires cannot withstand this blade. Seymolan says that she believes in him, and that if they fail, they can simply die together. Her declaration leaves him visibly surprised. She then closes her eyes and says that she was only joking. Seymolan concludes that in any case, they need to find another way to kill Count Cius. Ranson states that it is risky, but it may be the only option at the moment. The scene shifts to the village of Rera, where some children run through a field. One of the boys shows an enormous mushroom he found, but his friend claims his is even bigger. Excited, one of them runs off, suggesting they go home to measure which one is bigger. The village is suddenly engulfed in a massive fire. Frightened, the villagers wonder what is happening. A knight attacks one of the villagers with his sword. Another man is stabbed from behind by a soldier. A body is then unceremoniously thrown onto a cart. The knights observe the destruction they have caused. They spot the children and order that no one be allowed to escape. A group of soldiers approaches the boys. The boys find themselves cornered by the knights. An arrow is fired at high speed. The projectile strikes one of the knights in the head. More arrows instantly bring down 2 other soldiers. The children look in surprise toward the direction from which the shots came. An archer approaches and asks if they are all right. One of the boys asks him who he is. He introduces himself as Liberapiet Randa. The children repeat the name, confused. Then they recognize him as the Baron. Randa says that they will talk in detail later. For now, he says they need to leave that place. One of the boys shouts that his mother is still there, but Randa pulls them away from the fire. He realizes that no matter how many of his men they kill, it is impossible to stop it. Randa watches the village in flames and concludes that the Count has truly crossed the point of no return. The scene shifts to the Count's castle under the light of the full moon. Inside the walls, carts carrying covered bodies are lined up. A soldier oversees the line of carts. A subordinate informs Delkashu that a total of 116 bodies were brought in, more than the designated quota. Delkashu says that he will take care of the rest and dismisses him. He approaches one of the bodies and pulls back the sheet covering it. He rises from one of the bodies and wipes his mouth. With a smile, he comments that Ranson's group will enter the palace tomorrow, and that the moment he has long awaited is approaching. Then he turns to walk away from the pile of bodies. Suddenly, a hand moves beneath one of the sheets, and Delkashu stops and turns, sensing the disturbance. A sword is swiftly drawn from beneath the sheet. A wave of energy erupts from the cart toward Delkashu. In an earlier conversation, Seamalan informs that, according to intelligence, the bodies from the village of Ruera will be transported today. She then instructs her brother to pretend to be dead and infiltrate the cart. That way, he would be delivered directly to the Count and must suppress his mana until then. The plan was to attack when the Count lowered his guard. Delkashu blocks the strike and asks what brings him there without notice. Ranson strains against his defense and admits that he knew it would not be easy. Delkashu comments that Ranson's body has healed and congratulates him for perhaps having found an elixir. Ranson realizes that the strategy has reached its limit, and that in the end, they will have to face each other. Then Delkashu prepares for combat and calls out to him. He invites him to give him the taste of a delicious despair. Ranson focuses and assumes his stance with the sword. He feels the connection with his blade, his eyes preparing to read the heart of the sword. Then the two charge forward and their blades collide. Delkashu is hurled backward by the force of the impact. He recovers and unleashes a wide horizontal attack. Ranson jumps to evade the blow. He lands and turns back toward his opponent. Delkashu charges toward him once again. Ranson prepares for the next move. Delkashu fixes him with an intense stare. Ranson slides across the ground, dodging the attack as it passes by him. He then spins and delivers a swift strike toward Delkashu's neck. But the vampire manages to block the blade at the last second. Delkashu remarks that it was impressive, for if his aura had been weaker, his neck would have been severed. He adds that this was to be expected of the kingdom of Banroa. A new voice reveals that he must be the missing second prince of Banroa, whose body was never found. Delkashu merely comments on how precious that is. He then states that by offering such a valuable soul, his wish will surely be fulfilled. Ranson advances with a powerful arcing strike. Delkashu declares that it is useless no matter how many times he tries. He then blocks the blade with his hand and claims that the sword will never pierce his aura. Ranson presses his blade harder against Delkashu's hand. Then their powers collide, causing a massive explosion. Elsewhere in the city, the night remains calm under the full moon. Nagi is sitting at a table outside a tavern with a companion. His men approach and ask why he called them. One of them asks if he is planning to stir up some major trouble. Nagi replies that no, but that he received information that something unusual might happen. Another member of the group then asks what kind of information he received. Suddenly, all of them react to a massive tremor. In the distance, they see the collision of energies and wonder if Count Celsius is fighting someone. The men ask if this was what the chief was talking about and who the opponent might be. Nagi takes out a spyglass and wonders who would dare do something so audacious. He decides that they need to check it out and hands the device to one of his men. The man looks through the spyglass and recognizes the person in the fight. Surprised, he wonders if that really is Ranson. Nagi asks what he heard, questioning whether Ranson's body has truly recovered. In a dark room, Seamalan tells him that this is the last chance and that it will not come again. She advises him to think carefully so that he will not regret it for the rest of his life. Back in the present, Nagi remains silent. His men ask whether they are just going to keep watching. An image of an archer protecting frightened children is shown. The companions then declare that they should intervene as well. He turns to his men and apologizes. Meanwhile, the blades of Ranson and Delkashu clash violently. Ranson prepares to attack his opponent once more. Delkashu again stops the blade with his bare hand. Ranson retreats and prepares to strike again. Delkashu reacts when the blade finally pierces his defense. A cut opens on his neck and he touches it with his hand. He then clenches his fist and curses the boy. The full moon illuminates the top of the ruined castle. Delkashu touches his own neck and comments on the magnificent swordsmanship of his opponent. Ranson continues to stare at him without saying a word. Then the vampire supposes that one day he might be caught. He admits that it is not as if he can continue taking blows forever, as other vampires appear behind him. The vampires all advance together toward Ranson. He prepares for the imminent attack. With a single motion, he cuts down one of the approaching vampires. He curses the vampires, for he hid among the corpses only to face Xius in a one-on-one battle. Ranson realizes that there is no end to them. At this pace, he will be exhausted before he can even bring down Xius. One of the vampires attacks him with a swift strike. He dodges the blade as it grazes past his face. Ranson realizes that he needs to hurry and deal with them. Another vampire prepares a vertical attack against him. Ranson turns in surprise as he senses a sudden approach. An arrow cuts through the air at high speed and strikes the vampire squarely in the head, interrupting his attack. After the impact, the vampire's body crumbles to the ground. The other vampires react, recognizing the silver arrow imbued with aura. Ranson turns to see where the shot came from. He recognizes Liberpiet Randa with his bow in hand. A young man beside him waves and shouts that they are there as well. Ranson calls him by name Jalren. Next, he sees C. Milan approaching. Soon after, Daisy appears as well. He is surprised to even see Seclin among them. A group of men advances, with their leader shouting that everyone should die, as all of his targets are now gathered. Liberapiet aims his bow once more. C. Milan extends her hand forward. Jalran fires his arrows and strikes down 2 vampires at once. Daisy and Seclin fight together, defending themselves against enemy attacks. Ranson asks why they are all there, worried about the possibility of them getting hurt. Daisy scolds him for trying to do everything alone, stating that everyone is here now. She declares that this is something they need to face together. Jalran agrees enthusiastically. He then tells his brother to focus solely on the Count. Ranson reacts to his companion's words. He understands that it is no longer the time to treat them like children. His gaze becomes focused and resolute for battle. Ranson raises his sword and declares that there is a bastard he needs to deal with. Delkashu asks whether he should start by tearing off his arm. The vampire's arm transforms, growing larger and sprouting sharp claws. Delkashu attacks with his transformed arm, but Ranson blocks the blow with his sword. He then brings his hand to his neck, and a barrier manifests, repelling the vampire's attack. After the explosion, Delkashu's arm is completely disintegrated. He looks at his own shoulder and questions what just happened. Ranson raises a broken necklace and shouts that it is the necklace of protection. The necklace he found in the ruins shatters on the ground, having fulfilled its purpose. Delkashu stares at him, leaving an opening after his all-out attack. Ranson seizes the moment to use his secret trump card. He declares that the heart of the sword and his heart become one. Then he charges forward to deliver the strike. Ranson releases a powerful whirlwind-shaped attack. A man with his face partially covered reveals himself and asks how they dare do this to him, Kias. He then shouts that Ranson will be the one to die and unleashes his own attack. Ranson's whirlwind begins to overpower his opponent's strike. Xias is struck head-on by the attack. A fissure opens at the neck area, cut by the continuous assaults. Through that opening, Ranson prepares for the final blow. He lunges forward with a direct and precise thrust. The strike hits Xias directly in the neck. Ranson remains in his stance, panting after the final movement. Ranson stands as Xias' body collapses to the ground. The head of the vampire lord rolls across the ground, defeated. Fallen, Xias asks whether that is a soul blade. The young man explains that he merely tried to mix the key of the ancient sword with an aura blade. He then wonders whether that truly is a soul blade, the symbol of a grand master. Suddenly, one of the remaining vampires clutches his chest and screams. Daisy and Jalren watch as the other vampires fall one by one. Nagi's men wonder whether they are dying from shock and what is happening. Xias' body disintegrates as Ranson realizes that he truly killed him. The archer calls out to him by the title, Sir Ranson. Liberapiet then confirms that he truly killed Xias. Liberapiet explains that, according to the records, vampires who lose their progenitor lose their senses for 1 or 2 days. Ranson asks whether they will recover in a few days, and the archer confirms that now is the perfect chance to eliminate the remnants. He then asks for permission to exterminate all those bastards before the night ends. With a smile, Ranson replies that they are the ones who should be asking him for permission. Liberapiet bows and thanks him, saying that thanks to him they avenged their comrades. Ranson watches him with a faint smile. He extends his hand and says that he will count on him so that together they can make the city a good place to live. Then he says that he was going to tell him later, but has no choice since he arrived so suddenly. He reveals the crest of the Pietro family, explaining that 300 years ago, his family was also part of the nobility of Gloryland. Liberapiet hands him the crest and asks him to accept it. The archer kneels before him and swears that from that moment on, he will serve him as his lord. From afar, Simulan remarks that she knew he would go so far as to give him his crest. Ranson asks Simulan whether she knows Liberapiet well, and she explains that her information comes from him through her connections. He looks at her in surprise. Then he questions her about collaborating with rebel forces, but she says that she only helped a little. Simulan suggests leaving the rest to Sir Liberapiet and focusing on finding evidence of the Count's crimes. She explains that the more the Count is discredited, the greater the citizens' support will be. Ranson agrees with the strategy. With Xias' death, the support of the citizens was necessary to govern the city of Kushan, so they gathered business leaders and local citizens to form an investigative team and collect evidence. Ranson and Simulan arrive at a chapel, and he asks if that is the place. The two look into the interior of the Great Hall. They walk through the area, and she comments that there is nothing important there. He points to a statue. merely remarking that it is cold and unsettling. But Simolan points to something and asks what that is, as an item on Ranson's chest begins to react. Ranson holds the artifact and wonders why it is suddenly glowing. Then the artifact projects unstable energy in front of him. A book materializes from the energy, and he realizes that the object is glowing again, just like that time. Simolan identifies it as the Book of Destiny and suggests that they try to open it. But Ranson refuses, explaining that if they open it, they could be sent to the past again, and his disappearance would cause factions to fight over the territory. She then agrees and tells him to put the object away, and he prepares to do so. Suddenly, the book flies out of his hand and opens on its own in mid-air. An intense light envelops him as the book displays a message. An image of a medallion with a six-pointed star is shown. He finds himself sitting in a moving carriage under a sunny sky. He covers his face and realizes that he has, after all, been sent to the past. Then he looks around and wonders where he is. The carriage continues along its path through a vast green field. He observes the other hooded people in the carriage and notices that this time he has companions. But he notices something different about one of his companions. Ranson wonders about the pressure emanating from the man seated in front of him. The man then looks at him and asks if he has awakened, calling him by name. He realizes that this person is on a completely different level from the heretical leader he faced. His hand instinctively goes to the hilt of his sword. Ranson realizes that it is not just that man's presence. He notices that all the mana in the area is swirling around him, which makes no sense even for a Grand Master. The man then reveals himself and explains that they met by chance, and that he took Ranson as his disciple. Ranson understands that this time, he is that man's disciple. Ranson asks when he took him as a disciple, and the man replies that it was a week ago. With a smile, he comments that it is miraculous and seems like divine intervention. Ranson asks for forgiveness and notices the difference in that man's demeanor compared to the other cultists. The man introduces himself as Archduke Rhytena Celsius and declares that his wish is to eradicate the cultists. He then addresses Ranson Van Roa, reminding him that a week ago he became his disciple. Now they are on their way to his castle, where the young man will receive his teachings. Ranson finds it strange that he is explaining the entire situation to him. Celsius says that the young man will be under his care and hopes that his aspirations will be fulfilled. A sudden realization dawns on Ranson, and Celsius asks whether he has already uncovered the truth. Ranson wonders what is happening in the world. He finds Celsius's kindness strange, considering that he sees him as an anomaly, and wonders whether he knows something. Ranson then replies that for him as well, it is an honor to join the Master. He asks him whether he is truly fine with the situation, since he does not even know who he is. Celsius agrees that this is true, and says that for that reason, the feeling he has now is fascinating. But he states that one thing is certain about the event that is unfolding when combined with his own purpose. He concludes that the event may be something he agreed to a long time ago, and Ranson reacts without understanding. Celsius admits that, to be precise, he also does not know, and that it is merely a feeling he has. Ranson questions what he means by it being just a feeling. Celsius then places his hand on Ranson's shoulder. The situation grows increasingly confusing for Ranson as the carriage continues on its way. They approach a massive gate. The carriage finally arrives at the city of glowing steel. Ranson observes that somehow he ended up there. Celsius then introduces the place as the city of knights where he resides. Glowing steel. Celsius explains that although he is the Archduke, he entrusts most of the governance to his subordinates in order to teach the next generation of scholars. Along the way, he subtly taught Ranson about the common knowledge and etiquette of that ancient era. Thanks to him, Ranson was able to gradually adapt to life there. He does not know how to return home, so he has no choice but to focus on the present. The technology and swordsmanship of that place are more advanced, so he must ensure that he gains something from it, just like last time. Celsius informs him that at the castle they are heading to, he has another disciple. He describes him as a sincere and just young man whom Ranson will soon meet. They finally arrive at the Grand Castle. Upon arrival, Ranson and a blonde-haired woman react in surprise when they see each other. Celsius stands between the two and asks whether they know each other. Eodin Serum replies that they do, and reminds her master that he is the man who helped her at the cultists' chapel about a year ago. Celsius recalls her mentioning that the man used a peculiar sword key, and she confirms that it is correct. He then says that it is fortunate that they know each other, as Ranson is now her junior, and he expects her to teach him well. Celsius explains that he took Ranson as his disciple, but has been incredibly busy lately. Celsius decides that for now, she will be the one to teach him. He then takes his leave, saying that he has matters to discuss with the magistrates and that he will go on ahead. Ranson can barely believe the situation he finds himself in. The blonde-haired woman stares at him, surprised to meet him again as the Archduke's disciple. He turns to greet her, but she interrupts him and asks what he thinks he is doing. She then places her hands on her hips and asks if that is the proper way to greet one's senior. He realizes that she is already asserting herself through hierarchy. Ioden Serum informs him that regardless of his life until now, he is now one of the master's only 2 disciples, along with her. She asks if she is wrong, and he agrees that she is right. She instructs him to always keep his actions in mind so as not to disgrace the master. He finds her strict as she demands that he always maintain a neat appearance and proper conduct. She points at his boots and asks, when was the last time he polished them? Next, she indicates that his cloak is crooked. And finally, she asks what is wrong with his hair. She scolds him, saying that like that, he is no different from a bandit. Then she asks what it is and why he keeps staring at her hair. Ranson points to his own hair and asks whether she could say something about his as well. Ioden Serum touches her own hair. She steps back quickly as other people watch the scene. As they walk through a courtyard, the woman introduces herself as Ioden Serum. She adds that she is also a member of the Archduke's Royal Guard, the Knights of the Horizon. Ioden admits that, to be honest, he may be stronger than she is. But she heard from the master that he still cannot properly control his sword ki. She grips the hilt of her sword, stating that the only way to learn swordsmanship is by facing each other directly. Then she draws her sword and tells him to draw his, as it is time for his senior to teach him the way of the sword. Ranson understands why he was suddenly called to the training field. Ioden states that she is not doing this to vent her earlier embarrassment and asks him not to misunderstand her. He agrees and draws his sword, saying that there is no need for words before a blade. Ioden Serum explains that since they cannot manipulate mana, they focus on the spirit of the sword. She states that the spirit of the sword has a single will. Then Ioden demonstrates that will by charging forward to strike. Ranson carefully observes her movement. In the clash, the blades of the two collide with force. He manages to block his instructor's strike. She then reveals that mana simply gathers in accordance with that will. He then understands that this is something completely new. Ioden comments that a constitution that directly controls mana would be advantageous, but she reminds him that mastery is the pillar and mana is the roof. Building a strong foundation is the most important thing. Ioden then asks him to try to raise the aura of his sword. Ranson concentrates, and a power begins to form around his blade. Ranson finally succeeds and says that he understands. Ioden Serum observes his blade carefully. Then she turns and offers her own sword to the young man. Ioden asks him to try raising the aura with her sword as well. He prepares himself for the new challenge. But Ranson questions what is happening with the blade. He wonders why the sword is behaving that way. Ioden then states that it is just as she expected. The instructor explains that a sword's aura is the manifestation of the blade's spiritual power, and a better sword possesses stronger spiritual power, which is why he succeeded earlier. She classifies him as a low-level specialist, barely at the introductory level, leaving him surprised. Ioden reveals that this level is the stage of reading the sword, swinging it along the path it reveals. Ranson's first step is to develop the ability to release aura with any sword. She then declares that there will be a special training session that night. After the training, Ranson is lying exhausted in the middle of the courtyard. Ioden calls him by name as he turns on the ground. She then asks whether the ground is supposed to be his bed. The instructor warns him not to disgrace his master's reputation and to be careful. Ioden asks why he is wearing the same clothes as yesterday, and Ranson replies that he did not sleep. He then stands up and grips his sword with determination. An energy begins to envelop the blade of his sword. Ranson delivers a powerful slash into the air. His master watches in complete surprise at the feat. He explains that he practiced all night, which is why he managed to do something he could not before. Ioden retorts that not even the most brilliant talent could achieve that in less than a week. Despite that, she congratulates him and says they can move on to the advanced stage. Ranson asks her to proceed with the training. Then the two begin an intense combat in the courtyard. Ranson attacks with force and Ioden blocks the strike. She holds her ground against his assault. Then, in a rapid exchange of blows, he pressures her with his attacks. Two spectators wonder how Ranson can be like that, and one of them notices that Ioden is actually being pushed back. The instructor comments that he is even using sword support. Ioden then leaps and charges at him with an aerial attack. He carefully observes her movement. Her blade stops just centimeters from Ranson's neck. He wonders how she could be so fast. After the strike, Ioden throws her sword into the air. She explains that this is the level of sword specialist, where the sword moves on its own. Ranson then understands that there is a stage where the sword moves even before he thinks. Ioden informs him that in 2 weeks there will be an exchange event with a scheduled duel. And naturally, all eyes will be on Ranson Van Roa, the direct disciple of Archduke Rhytena. Ioden states that he absolutely must advance one more stage before then. Ranson smiles and says that it is just as expected. He then declares that this is fun. A voice approaches, scoffing at that man, Rhytena. The man questions how Rhytena took in an orphan and now a vagrant of unknown identity. Then Cassidier Celsius reveals himself, criticizing Raithena's choice to accept mere strangers as disciples. Cassidier Celsius says that the Grand Duke's judgment is terribly poor and that he should have inherited the position. Iodin warns him to watch his words as many eyes are watching. He then asks her if she is trying to lecture him just because Raithena declared her his successor. Cassidier continues, saying that she is only an advanced specialist even after everything he did for her. And the novice, Ranson, is nothing more than a pathetic low-level specialist. He then demands to see the treasure that Raithena confiscated, but Iodin says that it cannot be shown. Cassidier again asks if she is trying to give him a sermon. Ranson watches Iodin tolerate the situation and calls her master. He offers to let Cassidier verify whether Raithena's judgment was accurate or not. The man questions him, not understanding the proposal. Ranson suggests that they have a match if he does not trust his swordsmanship. Iodin tries to stop him, but Cassidier wonders who would fight with a mere disciple. Ranson then asks if the solution is not simple, and states that all he needs to do is shut everyone up with his impeccable skill. The spectators whisper among themselves about the young man's audacity. Cassidier Celsius clenches his fist and questions his nerve. Then he turns and says that he will see how long Ranson's insolence lasts. She then turns to Ranson, saying that this is serious and that their master is a problem. He merely smiles and asks if she is done laughing. Iodin looks away and says that she could not hold it in earlier. Ranson states that no matter what schemes he uses, they only need to defeat everyone. She then agrees and tells them to resume training. Later that night, Ranson walks outside the courtyard. He then spots Iodin sitting on a stone bench and calls out to her. Approaching from behind, Ranson asks if she came out to train again. She replies that she was just looking at the stars. Ranson realizes that he used informal speech without noticing. Iodin invites him to look at the stars as well, and the two sit together. Iodin says that she will not scold him for the informal speech since no one is watching and calls him her savior. In a memory, Ranson simply responds. Iodin continues, saying that it is a bit late, but that she was very grateful that he saved her and the children. He then suggests that if she is grateful, she should use formal speech since he saved her life and is older. Ranson asks if she likes looking at the stars, and she replies that she likes to look at the 13 main deities, which makes him curious. She explains that all stars move, but there are 13 that do not move and remain in place, named after the deities. He then asks her why she likes those stars. Iodin points to a star, Mibabar, the goddess of wisdom, which rises only above their heads there. She reveals that when she was young, she did not know where she belonged. But when she saw that star, she realized where she should be, and that is why she likes to look at the 13 main deities. Then Iodin stands up to leave, saying that she needs to prepare a lecture, but Ranson reminds her that she has already finished it. He teases her, saying that she is just running away because she is embarrassed. Day breaks in the Great Hall. Iodin and Ranson walk together down a corridor. Before opening the door, Iodin asks him if he is ready. With a confident smile, Ranson simply answers yes. They then step out into a large courtyard where many other warriors are waiting for them. Ranson is surprised by the enormous number of people present. A group of men asks if he is the Grand Duke's direct disciple, and one of them says they will find out soon enough. He then realizes that everyone seems eager to tear him apart. Ranson understands that countless people wanted that position, so they would not look upon him kindly. An older man announces that, in celebration of the gathering, friendly duels may begin. The combat arena is presented as the fighters take their positions. Ranson waits alone at the center of the arena. His opponent stares at him from the other side of the field. The man says that he does not know why the Grand Duke chose him as his direct disciple, but he claims that this will soon change, because he will win and take that position. Ranson watches him in silence. His opponent then releases his power. Ranson smiles faintly at the challenge. Then he grips his sword and says that he can come at any time. He charges at high speed toward his opponent. The two blades collide with tremendous force. The man is shocked by Ranson's overwhelming power. Ranson then breaks his opponent's blade and prepares for the final strike. The opponent then realizes that he is about to die, and he lunges with his blade toward his opponent's neck. The man falls to the ground, defeated. Iodin watches the scene completely stunned. Cassidier Celsius is left speechless by what he has just witnessed. Ranson then turns to the crowd and simply calls for the next challenger. A new opponent takes position in the arena, raising his sword toward Ranson. He then charges forward with a powerful strike. Ranson prepares for the counterattack. With a single motion, he dodges the blow and brings his opponent down. Ranson rests his sword on his shoulder and calls for the next challenger. Other knights watch the fight from a distance. Then he defeats another opponent with a precise strike and asks for the next. He knocks down the following one with a punch and, with the man already on the ground, calls for the next. The spectators comment that he is a monster for having defeated one of their uncles. Cassidier Celsius watches the scene with disdain and then turns and leaves the area. He wonders if those were all the opponents his great-uncle prepared, finding it easier than he imagined. A final opponent approaches, and Ranson asks if he is the last training partner. The mysterious figure announces, "Here I come!" and charges to attack. Ranson prepares for combat, concentrating power into his sword. His opponent rushes in swiftly to strike. Then the mysterious figure leaps to deliver an aerial blow. But Ranson parries the strike, and the opponent's sword flies from his hand. He then wonders if he might have gone too hard on the young man. Next, the hooded figure turns to leave. Before departing, the youth bows in respect. Ranson watches him leave the combat arena. The scene shifts to a banquet hall with a lavish table. Two men talk and drink wine during the celebration. Eoden and Ranson, now dressed in formal attire, comment that they are glad everything ended well. Ranson remarks that if the closing banquet goes smoothly, there will be no problems, but then he points to his senior's outfit. Eoden replies proudly that it is the standard attire and that he should learn from her. He then asks why she is wearing training shoes. She quickly walks away, leaving Ranson behind. The banquet takes place, marking more than a month since his arrival. He recalls the Book of Destiny that brought him to that time, and had hoped that something would happen. His thoughts are interrupted when a voice calls him Lord Ranson. The young man he fought earlier approaches and introduces himself again as Milo Hyasin. Ranson recognizes him as his final opponent from the arena. Milo Hyasin suddenly bows and declares his admiration, leaving Ranson surprised. He explains that he was captivated by Ranson's confident stance and that it was an honor to fight him. Ranson scratches the back of his neck as he accepts the young man's exaggerated praise. Milo reveals that he also possesses a unique constitution. He then removes his hat and reveals himself to be a half-elf. Ranson realizes that elves truly exist. Milo explains that ordinary people communicate with sword spirits, but his dream is to be like Ranson, someone who can use both sword spirits and elementals. Ranson feels a bit guilty for not having a unique constitution. The young half-elf reminds him of his own children, so he cannot bring himself to say anything. Ranson then encourages him, saying that he will succeed if he tries hard enough. Milo shares that after a popular procedure, it became easier for him to communicate with sword energy. Ranson asks whether something like doping has become popular these days. The two continue their conversation in the middle of the hall. Suddenly, Milo points toward the window and says that it is beginning. The psychedelic moon rises in the sky through the banquet hall's window. He comments that it appears once a month and is very beautiful to see from there. Ranson, however, questions whether it can truly be considered beautiful. The triangular moon hangs in the night sky. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the banquet hall. One of the guests asks what is wrong with his companion. Ranson watches the scene, not understanding what is happening. People begin to transform into monstrous creatures. He then wonders whether this is the prophecy of the Book of Destiny. Milo suddenly bends over in pain and calls out to Lord Ranson. The young half-elf says that his body feels strange as he transforms. Ranson calls him by name, watching the change. Milo then wonders if he will be all right as the transformation progresses. Ranson kneels before the creature and asks Milo to awaken. The beast recognizes him and murmurs Ranson's name. He then confesses that his wish was to become a knight. Ranson watches him with an expression of anguish, but a monster charges in to attack, and Milo throws himself at the creature to stop it. Then Ranson turns at the last second as he senses the assault. The creature attacks, but its blow is blocked and it is hurled away. Then the creature lunges at Ranson. He then asks why this is happening, but the beast charges again, evading the strike. Ranson once again wonders why this is happening. His attacks continue to miss their mark, and he wonders why. A voice calls out to him, pulling him out of his trance. At his side, Iodin Serum blocks the attack of another creature. She shakes him and warns that they need to leave now or they will both die, pointing toward the exit. But Ranson hesitates, worried about Milo. In the hall, Milo is overwhelmed and bitten by two other lycanthropes. He realizes it is too late as Iodin pulls him by the arm. With a defeated look, he agrees to leave. As they run, Ranson explains that all the enemies are too strong and that their reactions are too fast. Iodin then looks at him and says that if she can do it, so can he. One of the creatures watches them as they attempt to escape. Then one of the lycanthropes howls, and the others respond in chorus. Suddenly, the pair finds themselves completely surrounded by the monsters. Ranson takes on a determined stance. With a single sword strike, he severs the head of one of the creatures. The monster roars as it is struck. Eoden also springs into action, cutting down another enemy that approaches. Ranson turns and faces three more lycanthropes ahead of him. With a spinning motion, he attacks the creatures around him. The duo fights in perfect sync, carving a path through the chaos. They seize the opening and start running down the corridor again. Iodin warns that they are almost at the exit. She says they will leave through there to regroup with the other knights. But as they stop in front of the door, she says that the monsters are after the master of the treasury and that they need to stop them. They turn and realize that the lycanthropes are blocking the door. Iodine raises her sword, stating that this is the last one and that she will attack again. But Ranson stops her and asks her to wait a moment. He says that something feels wrong, and from the back of one of the monsters, something begins to emerge. Tentacles burst violently from the creature's back. The two watch as the other lycanthropes also reveal their tentacles. Then Iodine takes position and blocks the rain of attacks with her sword. Ranson watches her and reflects on the realm of sword mastery, where reaction speed approaches 0. He calls for them to advance together, and she agrees. On the ground, the severed tentacle pieces begin to move and regenerate. Ranson turns as he notices movement behind him. One of the regenerated tentacles lunges rapidly toward him. With a swift motion, he manages to block the attack. He then joins Iodine and warns her that those things are regenerating. The two face the tentacles, and Ranson concludes that merely cutting them will not be enough. Iodine shoves Ranson aside, placing herself in front of the attack, and she is grabbed, the tentacle piercing straight through her abdomen. Ranson is left in shock at what has just happened. With a shout, Ranson unleashes his power. He swings his sword in a swift arc, cutting down all the tentacles around him. The appendages dissolve, but the remaining liquid on the ground begins to merge again. The main lycanthrope attacks him with its own tentacles. Ranson dodges with a quick movement and strikes the lycanthrope, cutting it in half. He takes a deep breath, regaining his composure. Alone in the hall, he turns and walks toward the exit. Outside, he sees the chaotic battle unfolding across the city. His face is stained with blood as he watches the scene. He then notices a strange light in the sky. He wonders if that light is the cause of all the chaos. Suddenly, Ranson staggers backward. He falls to the ground, lamenting that even though he thought he had grown stronger, he failed to protect anyone. A notification informs him of his failure to alter history. He awakens in an unknown place, questioning the female voice he hears. The voice explains that it is using broken causality to rewind time. She warns him that this power is not infinite, and that failure will result in complete defeat. A book appears before him, and the voice wishes him good luck. The text in the book changes, mentioning that his master has returned a treasure. Ranson is surprised as he reads the message. A medallion with a 6-pointed star is shown. The scene shifts to Ranson traveling in a carriage under a blue sky. He startles when someone calls out to him. A man pulls back his hood and asks if he is all right. The man is Burson, who mentions having found him by chance and taken him as his disciple. Ranson then realizes that he has returned to the beginning of everything. Ranson turns to his master and greets him. He then asks what war trophy he brought back in the chest. Burson reveals that it is a sacred relic of the cult. Upon hearing that, Ranson realizes the terrible connection to future events. He tries to warn his master that something terrible happened because of the relic, but Burson interrupts him with a simple, "Enough." He states that he does not know what happened, but that it seems to be something Ranson himself must resolve. Ranson asks him what he means by that. His master simply replies that he does not know, but that he is sorry and thanks him. With that, Ranson understands that he will have to resolve everything on his own. Then he decides to make a different request of Burson. He asks his master to teach him the art of the sword. Burson smiles and agrees that starting that way is not a bad idea. The two take their positions for training, swords in hand. Burson raises his weapon and declares that from that moment on, he will show him the objective he must pursue. Energy gathers around the blade of Burson's sword. He then challenges him to attack with all his strength. Ranson accepts and, with his own sword energized, announces his attack. He charges forward swiftly. Then he unleashes a strike that creates a massive whirlwind. The technique surges toward his master, but Burson stands firm watching the attack approach. He smiles with confidence. Gripping the sword with both hands, he prepares himself. With a single motion, his blade cuts through Ranson's attack. Surprised, Ranson drops to his knees and asks what that was. Burson reveals that it is the realm of the complete blade, the aura of steel. He explains that one must refine the soul until it becomes one with the sword. Ranson stares at his master, understanding that he must reach that realm. Elsewhere, Iodine Serum is informed that, for a time, she will have to teach. Ranson steadies himself with a resolute gaze, determined to protect them. In the castle courtyard, he practices a wide swing with his sword. He continues the motion with a precise spin, but his training is interrupted, making him look up. The castle tower bell begins to ring. In the sky, someone announces that the psychedelic moon has appeared. Milo Hyacinth smiles enthusiastically at the person beside him. In a hall, Ranson watches the scene with a tense expression as everything has begun. Under its influence, two of the knights transform into lycanthropes and roar. Ranson observes the scene in silence. He recalls that for 2 weeks he traveled through time, discovering that the monsters were students who had received a treatment mentioned by Milo. Even after investigating the related drugs, he found nothing unusual. He remembers Milo calling out, saying that his body felt strange as he transformed. Ranson recalls that moment with a tense expression. Then he finds himself once again before Milo, who is struggling against the transformation on the ground. He kneels and asks his friend to hold on just a little longer. But another creature charges at him. With a swift motion, he cuts the beast down with his blade. After the strike, he finds himself surrounded by other lycanthropes. Even so, with his sword in hand, he stands firm and determined to try. One of the lycanthropes leaps toward him to attack with its claws. He decides that this time will be different and advances with his sword, declaring that he can drive the monsters away. With a sideways slash, he strikes one of the lycanthropes. His movement opens a path through the enemies. He sees Milo being attacked by another lycanthrope and shouts his name, then runs toward them to help. Suddenly, one of the creatures appears behind him. He turns and cuts down the lycanthrope. A scream distracts him, making him look to the side. Another monster charges toward Milo, who lies on the ground. The creature calls out his name as it is subdued. Ranson freezes as he remembers Milo's wish to become a knight. He fails to protect him once again. Then Iodin shouts his name. Iodin positions herself in front of Ranson and blocks the attack of one of the monsters. She shakes him and warns that they need to leave now or they will both die, pointing toward the exit. Iodin then says that they are all ridiculously strong and suggests splitting the tasks. She proposes cutting the necks while she handles the claws. But Ranson interrupts her with a shout, telling her to be quiet. Ranson drops to his knees on the ground, and she shouts his name again. He then charges alone down the corridor toward the lycanthropes. With a leap, he throws himself at the creatures to attack them. Ranson kneels on the ground, defending himself against multiple attacks. The scene shifts to a starry night sky. On a rooftop, Ranson asks Iodin whether Lord 13 is watching, leaving her confused. She turns to him and asks how he knew about that. He explains that he knows because she already told him, and that seeing Lord 13 helps him know where they are. Ranson asks if she is thinking of protecting that place while looking at the sky. Iodin confirms that it was there that she received everything she has, but asks him why he protected her. He then recalls the words about staying alive and protecting. She mentions the realm of sword support, where the weapon moves on its own, and Ranson asks whether it moves against the owner's will. With a smile, Iodin asks if his concern is that she might not be able to control her own sword, but she explains that upon reaching that realm, such distinctions lose their meaning. Ranson reflects that the sword is him, and he is the sword, and that its movement is merely his heart. Back in the battle, he unleashes a circular strike against the enemies. From the defeated creatures, a new mass of tentacles forms. The tentacles surge forward to attack Ranson. He advances through the blows, carving a path with his sword. He prepares for a final attack. With a single motion, he cuts the creature in half. Iodin runs to him and asks if he is crazy and trying to kill himself, as he realizes that he saved her. He then says that if she has the breath to talk, she should use it to swing her sword. Then one of the lycanthropes charges to attack. Ranson intercepts it with a strike of his sword. He realizes that he saved Iodin and killed the monster. Amid the fallen enemies, he wonders if he finally succeeded. Iodin then warns that the lycanthropes are heading outside. She pulls him and says that they need to leave as well. Outside, Ranson notices a familiar light in the sky. He asks in disbelief whether this is happening again. A notification informs him that the alteration of history has failed. Time rewinds once more, consuming the broken causality. In the book, the dates change, showing a new starting point. He finds himself once again in the carriage under daylight. With a determined gaze, he understands that he cannot merely win. Ranson continues his journey in the carriage, reflecting on his path. He understands that his mission is to protect the cult's treasure, but he will not be able to overcome this challenge without reaching sword support. So he turns and calls for his master, and asks him how exactly he can reach sword support. Ranson calls for his master. Then he asks how exactly he can reach sword support. He states that the young man is almost there, only half a step away. Ranson replies that he feels the same. In a battle memory, he charges forward with his sword against a lycanthrope. He strains to move faster, but an enemy attacks him from behind. The need to kill faster becomes evident, and he lunges forward in a swift strike. Back in the present, Ranson says that no matter how he calls, the sword does not move. Sitting beside him, Burson states that calling does not work, and the young man asks him to explain. The master asks whether he orders his heart to beat or his stomach to digest. Ranson replies that he does not. Then the master explains that a sword is not commanded but accepted. He processes his master's words. Sword support means that the blade becomes part of the user, not by command, but by unity. And this support is not a separate stage, but simply the process of becoming one with the weapon. Then two men lift him up as Burson instructs him not to draw his sword, and Ranson asks what he should do. His master advises him not to pull the sword, but to wait for it to pull him. Ranson begins to protest, but he knows there is no time. Elsewhere outside a great castle, Iodin Serum spots him and reacts. Ranson approaches her in silence. She comments that he is still the same as ever. Then he smiles and states that seeing her somehow calms him. The others, including the master, observe the interaction between the two. The master comments that he realized it faster than expected, and Ranson raises his sword into the air. Two guards react, questioning his audacity in front of the Grand Duke, but a hand is raised to silence them. Bursun declares that the young man has finally touched it. He has reached the realm where the blade and the self are one. Then his master asks what Ranson's true desire is. He states that his desire is to protect Iodin and the city. His gaze hardens with conviction. Iodin watches him in silence. Later, inside a banquet hall, Ranson, Iodin, and Milo Hyacinth are together in formal attire. She thanks Ranson, saying that thanks to him she was able to wear proper shoes to the graduation banquet. And she confesses that she almost ran away midway to change them. He replies that that would have been strange for him. Milo says that to protect the two of them, it is better to stay nearby. Iodin asks what he means, but Ranson replies that some things are just like that. The half-elf comments on Iodin's unexpectedly sloppy side, and she insists that it was only that one time. Ranson remains silent, his gaze focused. A prophecy says that if the words in the Book of Destiny are erased and the Master returns to the past, only one chance will remain. Suddenly a bell tolls and a rift opens in the sky. Ranson turns and states that this time they must succeed. Then lycanthropes invade the hall, attacking those present. Iodin asks what is happening as Milo drops to his knees. Ranson grips her by the shoulders, asking her to listen carefully. He instructs her to lead the knights and evacuate the healthy recruits, but she protests, saying that they need to kill the monsters before any evacuation. He states that he will handle the monsters and that she must gather the troops after the retreat. Ranson then orders her to find a strange light to the south of the city, attack it, and eliminate its source. Iodin asks if he knows something. He confirms it and tells her to go, ordering her to take down anyone who tries to stop her without hesitation. Meanwhile, the lycanthropes continue to gather in the hall. Iodin finally agrees to his orders. Then she runs out of the hall to carry out her mission. Ranson remains in the middle of the chaos, holding one of the lycanthropes. Beside him, Milo begins to transform into a lycanthrope, saying that his body feels strange. Ranson asks him to hold on just a little longer. He turns to face the enemies approaching, and positions himself to protect Milo, surrounded by other lycanthropes. A horde of perhaps 300 lycanthropes reveals itself before him. A creature attacks with a powerful blow, but Ranson steps in between its claws. He decides that the number of enemies does not matter as long as his sword responds in his hand. Then he unleashes a series of high-speed strikes. The attacks hit several lycanthropes at the same time. Ranson advances, cutting down another opponent in his path, and he promises himself that this time he will not let a single enemy escape. He launches himself in a sweeping arc of motion, his blade cutting through the air. A lycanthrope lunges at him, but his reaction is instantaneous. His body moves even before he realizes it. He understands that it is not he who is wielding the sword. The sword is guiding him, leading him to strike another monster. The amount of information the blade transmits to him is overwhelming. It is incomparable to before, as he finishes off yet another creature. Dozens of movements that have not yet happened unfold before his eyes, and he realizes that this is the realm of sword perception. The remaining lycanthropes charge at him from all sides. He prepares for the attack, and unleashes another torrent of strikes that fills the entire hall. The creatures' bodies fall around him. This time he managed to kill all the lycanthropes before they could escape. Looking at the carnage, he declares that it is done. Milo curls up on the ground, now fully transformed. Ranson kneels beside him, asking him to hold on, as there must be a way to reverse it. But Milo replies that it is not that simple. Ranson encourages him not to say such weak things, stating that the skilled mages there will surely find a way. Milo apologizes to him and says that he knows the truth. He states that his condition cannot be undone, and that his only wish is to die as a human. And Milo takes his own life before Ranson. Several tentacles emerge from the creature and surge toward Ranson. He grits his teeth as he defends himself and drives his sword into the creature, being struck by the tentacles in the process. The monster bursts into flames and Ranson says that he has already suffered enough. As he watches the body burn, he promises that if Milo is reborn in 10,000 years, he will treat him well as family. He sheathes his sword and runs out of the hall, passing by the bodies of the lycanthropes. He looks over the city and realizes that there is no light, concluding that Iodin succeeded. Iodin runs toward him, calling out his name. She keeps running while shouting that Ranson was hit and that the master broke the chains of the heretics. In her recollection, she reveals that when the master was defeated, the strange light disappeared. With that, the lycanthropes lost their strength and one collapses in front of her. Ranson smiles, a light glowing in his chest, and says that she did well. Iodin suddenly stops as she sees him dissolve into particles and calls out to him. The full moon shines in the night sky. Elsewhere, a younger Ranson walks through a destroyed city. He clutches his chest and laments that he could not tell her that she did well. Ranson looks around and wonders if this is the center of the city of Kushan, calculating that a week has passed since his disappearance. He surveys the city and comments that it is a mess as expected. Since his siblings were not at the Ilneon estate, he leaps from one rooftop to another. He lands and concludes that this is the only place they could be. Then the young man approaches the castle of the Pietro Baroni. Since Ribera knew Sea, he deduces that she must have taken his siblings there to seek refuge. He believes that they must be safe with Ribera, but wants to see for himself. A woman appears behind him with a blade at his back, ordering him not to move and asking who sent him. He realizes that even the slightest movement will get him cut, and recognizes that she is a high-level specialist. His hand grips the hilt of his own sword. In a swift motion, he spins around and blocks her attack. Ranson recognizes her as Katrina, and she stammers his name. She asks excitedly if it is really him, and the young man confirms that it has been a long time since they last met. Katrina, incredulous, asks to take a closer look at him, and he comments that the situation is chaotic. She asks when he returned, and Ranson explains that Sia sent a message 2 days ago about an attack. Then Katrina turns and shouts for everyone to come out. Seklin Ilneon announces that his brother is back. Daisy Ilneon and C. Milan hear the news, and the young woman repeats that Ranson has returned. Daisy reacts with surprise at the revelation. From the courtyard, Ranson waves to them beside Katrina. He looks at the gathered group and says that now it finally feels real. Then he embraces Seklin and Daisy, saying that he has finally come home. Once gathered in a room, Ranson says that the joy of reunion is brief and that he will get straight to the point. C. Milan explains that in the week since Xias's death, Ashley has devoured half of the city of Kushan. Ranson asks if she is referring to Ashley, the former bandit leader, and wonders how that could have happened. She continues, saying that they themselves were about to be devoured by Ashley before his arrival. C. Milan adds that he applied blatant pressure, and Ranson asks what kind of pressure that was. She crosses her arms in silence. Daisy then reveals that he wants to marry her. Ranson wonders if he heard that right and asks what Ashley wants. C. Milan begins to explain that about 3 days after his disappearance, Ashley was the first to act. He brought in territorial forces, formed alliances with unscrupulous families, and even drew neutral factions to his side. In addition, he recruited the Red Warriors, and within 7 days took control of half of the city's armed groups. And now, he has even hired the Cultic Brotherhood. Ranson simply replies that he understands. He reflects that a great deal happened while he was away, and that any longer delay would have been a disaster. Daisy asks her brother to calm down first, but he ignores her. He then states that he is more controlled and rational than ever. Then he asks where he can go to have a deep conversation with that bastard. C. Milan informs him that the next day, there will be a meeting of the Kushan Council, and Ashley will be present. Ranson declares that this is the perfect chance to deal with Ashley and all the rest of the trash. But she stops him, saying that he cannot do that, because maintaining public order is essential. She reinforces that he knows a certain scale of armed group is a practical necessity. Then she pushes a book across the table toward him, and reveals that it is a list of targets. Ranson opens the book and analyzes its contents. The list shows names in blue for decent factions, black for irredeemable trash, and red for intermediaries. He notices that even those marked in red live off illegal activities, but C. Milan insists that they need them to keep the city running. Looking at the list, he asks whether Ashley is also marked in red. He then asks if everyone listed will be gathered tomorrow, and C. Milan confirms that they will. Ranson stands up, closes the book, and declares that he will handle the rest. The next day, in a ruined part of the city, several armed groups are gathered, waiting. One of the men points toward an arrival and tells the others to look. Ranson approaches accompanied by Katrina and Baron Daroa, and a man comments that he was alive after all. Katrina Egion of the Ilneon family is at his side, and Baron Daroa, also of the Ilneon family, accompanies him. Ashley turns and greets Lord Ranson. The bandit approaches, expressing relief that he came and that he is safe. Ashley asks why Miss Daisy did not come, and Ranson questions why he is asking about her. He replies with a smile that he likes girls with strong pride. Ranson stares at him with a cutting gaze. Ashley then asks if he heard about his proposal and asks him to look upon it favorably. He continues, saying that becoming family would not be bad for the new count. Ranson questions the title of new count, and Ashley confirms that he is the new count, and states that no one there would deny it. Ashley then declares that even the count will not be able to ignore his faction, since half the city is in his hands. He addresses the crowd, asking if they heard that some guys caused trouble during his absence. Then he raises the book containing the list of targets. Ranson points to the Karu family and accuses them of massacring an entire family to steal their property. He simply calls for Katrina. A member of the Karu family tries to explain himself while drawing his sword, but Katrina advances and executes the man with a single strike of her sword. The other faction members react, declaring that Ranson has gone mad. Ashley comments that the new count is frightening and that he is enforcing the law from the very beginning. Ranson then calls for the Rororan family, and Baron Dorowa executes one of its members. The Heron, Dazbiker, and Lucas families are the next to be called and eliminated. Ashley watches the bodies lying on the ground after the mass execution. He turns to Ranson and says that he thinks they understood the message. Ranson states that being too frightening can be counterproductive before calling the next names. He then lists the names Taplin, Dusk, Kukurak, X, and Shadowker, leaving Ashley surprised. Ashley turns to his men and shouts that this is why he warned them to know when to stop. Ranson, Baron, and Katrina walk toward him. Ashley stares at him and tries to justify himself to Ranson, saying that he always respected the limits and that the problem lies with the others. One of his allies confronts him, questioning why he is trying to distance himself now that they were profiting together. Ashley's ally accuses him of keeping the dirtiest share of the profits. Ashley and his men step back, questioning the title of New Count. Ranson prepares to act, and Ashley reacts as he senses the imminent danger. Then Ranson charges forward and strikes Ashley with a swift blow. Ashley staggers backward, questioning what he thinks he is doing. Ranson then lists the bandits' crimes, including 3 drug production facilities and 12 forced prostitution networks. And all of that was managed by Ashley. The sentence of execution is then declared. Ranson faces Ashley and his men amid the ruins. Then Ashley summons the Red Warrior Squad. Warriors in armor march toward him. Ranson warns him that it is still not too late to stop this bravado. But Ashley warns that if they continue like this, both sides will be annihilated. Ranson swings his blade at Ashley's neck, beheading him. The other men watch the scene in shock. The great warrior Uxala approaches and asks whether he truly intends to finish this. Ranson simply tells Uncle Uxala to choose an option. The warrior is then asked whether he will retreat or attack. Ranson asks if he truly believes he can kill everyone in that land of thieves, and how clean he is to say such a thing. Ranson states that whether one is clean or not is not what matters. He continues, saying that because of people like the warrior, families are destroyed. In a memory, a boy begs his mother not to leave. Illegitimate children are born, and the city gains more orphans because of it. Ranson then wonders what difference telling him all of that will make. With his sword raised, he warns that if Uxala does not understand, he will die. The warrior watches him. Then Ranson charges toward the men behind him. Uxala and the others are struck by the blow. Wounded, the warrior looks back. Amid the fallen men, he shouts for everyone to attack, for Ranson intends to kill them all. One of the men agrees, stating that if they do not work together, they will all die. Ranson confirms that he will kill them all, and challenges them to attack him at once. He then blocks the multiple attacks of his opponents. Ranson grips his sword, preparing for the battle. He concentrates for the next move. Surrounded, he defends against multiple attacks while striking at the same time, killing them all. Uxala calls him a bastard and charges toward Ranson, trying to strike him with his sword, but Ranson severs his head in an instant. The spectators call him insane, saying that such a thing cannot be possible. One of the men wonders if he is a grandmaster. Ranson then asks if they are the men Ashley hired. The group reveals itself as the Kalsaric Brotherhood. He looks at his new opponents over his shoulder. One of the men kneels and begs to be spared. Ranson admits that he is a bit weak for that kind of situation. He then orders everyone to kneel and raise their hands. One of the men asks if there are about 70 people left in total. With his sword in hand, Ranson decides that it is time to end this. He charges forward and cuts down several opponents at once. One of the survivors declares that they cannot defeat him. Then the man shouts for everyone to run. The men flee in panic through the ruins. Arrows are fired toward them. The fugitives are struck in the back. Atop a wall, 3 archers watch the scene. Jalran orders that not a single enemy be allowed to escape alive. The arrows continue to strike the fleeing men. The last survivors look toward the new threat. Katrina and Baron approach, and she announces that they have arrived as well. Katrina advances and attacks the men with her sword. Baron also joins the fight and brings down an enemy. From above, Jalran takes aim with his bow. His arrows hit their targets cleanly. Ranson runs toward one of the last men and attacks him with his sword. The sun begins to set on the horizon, and Ranson stands amid mutilated bodies. Simulan approaches through the devastation. He says that he killed them all, and she agrees. Ranson reports that everyone on the red list or higher has been eliminated. Simulan asks him why he did it. He simply replies that it was because of Lena. Ranson explains that those men were the reason Lena became an orphan, and he hates seeing the number of orphans continue to grow. He wants the city they govern to be a place where children can live and smile, but states that they were a necessary evil. Simulan argues that if they do not have the strength to hunt monsters, the city will die. She laments that she cannot think of a way to gather enough power to protect the city. Ranson smiles and asks whether he acted without thinking. Then he suggests excavating ruins. Simulan questions the idea of excavation. He confirms it, mentioning a place he visited recently. Ranson speaks about Mibavar, the goddess of wisdom, one of the 13 forgotten ancient deities. It was the place Iodin looked toward every day, the City of Knights. There lies the shining steel. He explains that if news of the excavation spreads, all the warriors of the land of thieves will head there. A group of people rides in a line through a forest. One of the riders asks if this is really safe, even though they were instructed to follow the merchants. A knight finds the sudden excavation of ruins strange, since there were no rumors, especially with the city in turmoil because of the purge. Another man questions the subjugation of monsters and regrets having come to that place. Ranson reflects that for merchants, fewer warriors mean less trade, which would certainly leave them dissatisfied. He then wonders what their expressions will be like later. Ranson turns to Calceric and asks if he has thought about the matter. Calceric states that to repay his debt, he and his brothers will dedicate their lives to serving him for the next year. But he adds that staying permanently requires more consideration, as they need to discuss it with their brothers and resolve matters in their hometown. Ranson concludes that in the end, they lack the conviction to place their trust in him. With a smile, Ranson says that it is a shame, because that is the only chance to claim a ruined castle. Calceric realizes that Ranson's gaze is not merely a bluff. The group rides toward the ruins. Upon arriving, the men question the place, seeing only a pile of rocks. Ranson explains that to others it may be just rocks and pillars, but to him the place is familiar. He observes the beautiful transformed site, a place that somehow vanished. One of the men comments that he cannot see any ruins. Ranson instructs him to look carefully, because everything they see is ruins. With a movement of his sword, he cuts away the vines blocking the path. The men look ahead and ask if those are walls. The group comes upon an immense structure covered in moss. Calceric approaches to inspect the construction. He runs his hand along the wall and comments on the architectural technique with no visible seams. Then the man wonders if it is from the era of magic. Ranson smiles and asks what everyone is waiting for. He orders them to tear away the moss. One of the men responds affirmatively while staring at a statue covered in vegetation. Another man announces that he found something there as well. A third discovers that it too is a wall. He then warns that there is a door there. Among the vines, the men discover pieces of metal. One of them identifies the material as Lucerus steel. He then lifts an ancient sword he found. Another man announces that he also found a sword. A third finds a suit of armor. Before long, one of them is already holding 3 ancient swords. Calceric realizes that the rocks and pillars are, in fact, buildings. He asks Ranson if they have just discovered an entire ancient city. Ranson simply welcomes them. He welcomes them to the ancient city of steel. One man comments that they will need many warriors and explorers to excavate ruins of such scale. They run toward Ranson, asking for a moment of his attention. He reassures them, saying that they will discuss the detailed information tomorrow when they return to the city. Calceric then calls Count Ranson to speak about the matter. Ranson turns to Calceric, questioning him. Calceric then asks if he may change his words. He speaks about staying there permanently, and Ranson comments on how strange it is for him to say it that way. Days later, rumors spread across the land of thieves about a city-sized ruin in Kushan where warriors are being recruited. Upon hearing about ancient weapons and armor, 2 men agree that they need to hurry before others claim them. In search of treasure and opportunity, everyone gathers and heads for the city of Kushan. A new day begins in the city. Ranson tells the group that the last 3 days were a chance to make things clear to everyone in the city. He continues, stating that now they know who truly rules the place. Baron and C. Milan know that the real fight begins now, as they will have to defend the city from beasts, bandits, and even from the Count himself. They stand on the threshold of a dream, able to shape the city, rebuild their home, and even found a new kingdom, and perhaps even take revenge on the Empire and reclaim the kingdom of Van Roa. Katrina and Daisy Ilneon listen attentively. Jalran adds that this also applies to the younger siblings, even those not born in Van Roa. Seklin Ilneon states that each of them will found their own houses. Ranson encourages them to grow stronger and dream higher, to restore what was lost and build what never existed. He then announces that he called them early because, from now on, they will train every day at that hour. Ranson will teach them a form of swordsmanship he mastered recently, pure fencing returned to the basics, without aura. Katrina asks why he is not teaching them aura techniques. He explains that they will learn about the sword itself, and that mastering this will make them stronger than a sword master. She then asks if that is why he suddenly became so strong, and Ranson simply confirms it. Katrina jumps excitedly and asks him to teach them. Ranson smiles at them. He then asks them to draw their swords, as he will explain the rules. The first rule is that during training, he is their master and will not hold back. The second is that for 24 consecutive hours, they must never let go of their swords, not even to sleep. He raises 3 fingers to announce the third rule. They must block however they can, and counterattack however necessary. Ranson apologizes to Katrina, but states that the older ones always take the first beating. and then strikes her in the face. He says that he would not hit her hard enough to injure her. Ranson explains that they only grow stronger after getting beaten. He then tells them to focus as if it were real combat, because the connection with the blade deepens only when it is wielded until the mind goes blank. Ranson strikes Daisy with his training sword. He reminds her that she once called that older brother Sir. Then he attacks Shyamalan for conspiring with rebel forces behind his back. Seklin is also struck for always acting like an adult. Jalren is next, and he hears that now he is the one getting beaten. Ranson pauses for a moment. He then says that it feels incredible, perhaps because he has gone a long time without training. Jalren and Shyamalan call him crazy for laughing while attacking them. But Katrina decides that they will not just stand there and take the beating. She then shouts for them to attack from all sides at once. The group rushes at Ranson and he blocks the multiple attacks with his sword. Ranson stands amid his fallen companions and asks if that is all they have. Katrina is lying on the ground. Shyamalan and Seklin are also down, with her saying she cannot get up and that he should just kill her. Ranson looks at the last warrior still standing. With his sword planted in the ground, Sarua supports himself as he rises. He steadies himself to face his opponent. Ranson recalls the moment of the coordinated attack when the two clashed. The entire group attacked him at once. He realized that Sarua's blade alignment and speed were good, but his anxiety made him hesitate before contact. He decides to observe him a little more instead of pressuring him too much for now. At the end of the day, the training comes to an end. Ranson then announces that it is time for a meeting. Lying on the ground, Shyamalan asks him to just kill her. Meanwhile, rumors of the ruins spread and reach the ears of the giant of the northwest. The man questions his servant about the city of Kushan. The servant informs him that Xius is dead and that an ancient city has been discovered. With a smile, the man declares that the heavens are on their side and orders the preparation of an army made up of the fastest and most experienced. He then states that what matters most is speed. Harun, the Gale King and one of the 5 kings of the land of thieves, declares that it has been a long time since his heart raced like this.